Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Grandpa coming to you from the Back Porch Brewing Company in North Venice, Florida. I'm out here doing my last dive. Gonna meet people from my old dive club in Jacksonville. Maybe today, but that's, they're going on the dive. Going hunting for shark's teeth. We were supposed to go do that on the beach today, but apparently it's kind of a crappy day for that. So today we're going to get back into Tales from Grimm and the Grim Reaper. This one's called Spindle, Shuttle, and Needle. Once, a very long time ago, there was a poor little girl whose mother and father had both died when she was a tiny baby. So she was sent to live with her godmother in a small cottage at the edge of a small town. This old woman made her living by spinning, weaving, and sewing. She was very kind to the little girl. She loved her dearly and brought her up well. She taught her all she knew. When the girl was 15, her godmother became very ill and told her, "It will not be long before I die. I shall leave you my cottage, my spindle, my weaver's shuttle, and my needle. With these you will be able to earn your bread. Remember to always be good and kind, and you will be happy." Soon after this, the old woman died, and the girl was left to live all alone. Every day she worked at her spinning, weaving, and sewing, and she managed to get by. As soon as she finished any work, someone was sure to buy it, but she remained quite poor. Now, about this time, a prince was traveling through the countryside in search of a bride. He could not marry a poor woman, and he did not wish for a rich one. "My bride must be both the poorest and the richest," he said as he traveled from town to town. I think I see where this story's going. Soon he came to the town where the young maid lived, and he asked, "Who here is the richest maiden?" He was told that the richest maiden lived in a large mansion near the town square. So the prince went there and found her sitting outside her splendid house, dressed in the most beautiful clothes. When he rode by, the maiden curtsied gracefully and smiled. She hoped the prince would choose her. The prince looked at her, but he said nothing, and he rode on. Next he asked, "Who here is the poorest maiden in town?" And so this is her with her cat. Of course she's got a cat. They all have cats. Poor maidens. That's probably one reason why this girl's poor. She's feeding a cat. I'm not in a cat. I'm not a pet person. So he asked, who's the poorest girl in town? Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who here is the poorest maiden in the town? He was told she was the young girl who spun, wove, and sewed all day. So the prince rode to her cottage and found the young woman working at her sewing. As the prince watched her through the window, the girl looked up and saw him. Then at once she blushed and turned away. She began to spin and did not look up again until the prince turned to leave. Then the young maid said, "How hot it is," and went to the window where she watched the prince ride into the distance. She did not leave the window until all she could see was the fine white feather in the prince's hat. And there's the prince with a feather in his cap. Then she went back to work and began to sing. Spindle, spindle, go and see and bring my true love back to me. As she finished her song, the spindle jumped from her hand and flew out of the room. And the girl watched it dance merrily down the road, trailing a golden thread behind it. It soon vanished from sight. Since the maiden now had no spindle, she began to weave. Meanwhile, the spindle continued down the road and ran out of thread just as it reached the prince. "What is this?" he said. "I will follow the golden thread and see where it leads me." In her cottage, as the girl sat weaving, she began to sing. Shuttle, weave both weft and woof. Bring my love beneath my roof. Woof. It's shuttle, weave both weft and woof. Not left, weft. Bring my love beneath my roof. The roof, the roof, the roof is on fire. The shuttle instantly leaped from her hand and sprang out the door. On the threshold of the cottage, it began to weave the most beautiful carpet ever seen. When the carpet was finished, it showed a brightly colored pattern of fine flowers, rabbits and deer, and birds with feathers so real that it seemed possible that the birds might sing. Now the poor girl had no shuttle, so she began to sew. This time she sang, "Needle, needle, stitch away, make my chamber bright and gay." This time the needle fell from her hand and danced around the room too fast to see. It was as if invisible spirits were working at the needle's command. For soon the chairs and tables were covered with the richest fabrics imaginable, and beautiful drapes hung on the windows. Just as the needle finished its work, the girl saw the prince being led back to her cottage by the spindle and the golden thread. When the prince arrived at the gate, he got off his horse and walked over the magnificent carpet and into the cottage. The young maiden blushed like a rose, and the prince thought she was more beautiful than anyone he had ever seen. "Here is a maiden, both poor and rich," thought the prince, and he immediately asked her to be his bride. The girl happily said yes. "Yes, yes, oh yes." It's probably the way she said it to him. "I will." So the prince placed her on his horse and led her back to his palace. There they celebrated with the most beautiful wedding anyone had ever seen, and the entire kingdom rejoiced for a month. Of course, the girl brought her spindle, her shuttle, and her needle along with her. They were placed in the palace with all the kingdom's richest treasures and were carefully guarded forever after. And here they are. That's probably the wedding. Bum, 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 bum. Peace out.